Manchester United are the champions of Europe again.
Hello and welcome back to the One United podcast. I'm joined as ever by Henry. Henry, how you doing?
Yeah, not bad. You?
Yeah, I'm good. It's a nice day. It's a lot easier to feel better on a nice day, isn't it? And we're joined by Nischal again. It's brilliant to have you on, mate. Obviously, founder of Nischal's blog, which is doing some real brilliant things at the minute. If you're a Chelsea fan, you need to go and check that out. So, Nischal, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks. Good to be back on after our last appearance in October, and yeah, looking forward to previewing this game.
Definitely. Well, we'll kick off with that then. Obviously, we've got a few things to talk about, but the big thing is obviously the game on Sunday. It's probably a fixture that has a bit of a different context to the last time we played. Obviously, you were flying high last time we pplayed, and we were struggling. You've since dropped off a little bit, picking it back up, and we've obviously gone on a good run. So I'll come to you first, Henry. What are your initial thoughts towards the game before we start?
It's a must-win for Chelsea, isn't it? Surely, with a position that we're in, where I think it's 6 points now clear. So Chelsea can't really afford to draw. I mean, we go for a draw in these games for some reason. We could so easily, with the way Chelsea play, we're keeping the ball and the two midfielders. If we press up on them, we could rob them in midfield if we want to, but it depends on what Solskjaer wants to do. I'm not massively confident about this game. And I'm more confident about this than I was about the Newcastle game, which is bizarre. And we spoke about this last week. We put 4 past Sociedad and then came in with a terrible performance on the Sunday. So, it's not a massive surprise that happened because we're just not a very good side, so inconsistent. So, but yeah, I'm hopeful, but I'm not massively optimistic considering the form that Chelsea are in at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing for a lot of United fans is this form that Chelsea are in. I think, especially given the recency of that Atletico Madrid result. Now, Nischal, I'll come to you next then. What just initial thoughts on the game first, and then do you think that Atletico Madrid result will massively boost you? Because obviously it was a disappointing result against Southampton. I think it's fair to say. Their first point they've gained in the last 7 games. And then, you really pull it out of the bag with Atletico Madrid. So how are you feeling going into this game?
I'm feeling confident, and that's off the back of the Atletico game. And I think if we hadn't come away with a result or anything from that game, it would be a much different story. But we're still unbeaten under Thomas Tuchel, unbeaten in 8 games, came away with our best win, or arguably one of our best wins of the season, definitely our best win under Tuchel so far. And we're in perfect confidence. We needed a big result to start off what's a really tough run for us, because after we have Liverpool at Anfield, we welcome Everton to the Bridge, Atletico second leg, Leeds. It's a very, very tough run, and this is just the second instalment of that. So if we didn't get off to a good start, it would be completely different. But of course, a new manager, he's been doing brilliantly. We've conceded 2 goals. We came away with a win against the La Liga leaders. So we're in a perfect position, in my opinion. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy, because we know in recent fixtures, bar the FA Cup semi-final, United have had the better record in this fixture time after time, and sometimes it's been dreadful performances from us. You look at a 4-0 in Frank Lampard's first game, you look at a 2-0 just a few years ago in the FA Cup. United have had the upper hand, but if there's ever a time that Chelsea are going to be capable of beating United, it's going to be Sunday. We're in perfect form. United, I would say, yeah, very good form as well, but when they're coming to Stamford Bridge, we've seen Tuchel and Solskjaer, of course, face off earlier this season. They got 1 win each, so they know each other, they know what they're coming up against. But we've got a home advantage for form. We're in the perfect position to play, and I'm really looking forward to it for sure.
I think that's an interesting point you brought up, something I haven't actually thought about before. Obviously, these 2 sides have played. Do you think the fact that Tuchel and Ole have already faced up, but Tuchel was obviously in charge of a different team then, do you think that gives Tuchel the advantage? Because he obviously knows how Ole's going to set up now. He's played against him twice this season, whereas Ole's looking at Tuchel, who's coming into a Chelsea team. He's only just come in. He's obviously implemented his system, but it's not quite perfect yet. Do you think Tuchel obviously has the upper hand then in preparation?
I wouldn't say the upper hand, because I think it works both ways. Solskjaer's had the privilege to play against Tuchel twice this season, and yes, it's a different team, but he knows the system he's going to play, and he knows which players he's going to focus on. Whereas Tuchel has played against the same Man United team with the same manager twice, so he's not necessarily changing much apart from his own team approach, which of course he's been developing already. So I think there's an upper hand for both managers, having played those games. Of course, United won at Parc des Princes, PSG won at Old Trafford. So it's very evenly split, but both managers will know how to come up against each other. We look at previous managers that Tuchel's faced so far with Chelsea. Hasenhüttl, he knew very well, of course, from his days in Germany. Someone like Jose Mourinho, that was the first time he played him, and he beat him, really well in a tactical performance. Simeone as well, that was the first time he'd played him. That was a new approach he had to come to. But playing Solskjaer, having already played him twice this season, is a bigger advantage than we've had throughout the whole of his tenure. Because, like I said, he knows what he's going to come up against. The team hasn't really changed since those results in the Champions League. Got a few arrivals, but Amad Diallo, is in the younger under 23 squad. So there's not much that's been changed from United apart from an upturn in form. So I would give a Tuchel maybe the slight upper hand, but nothing much between them. Both managers will know the tactical approach they're coming up against, and that's going to be huge.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I'll come to you then, Henry, back to the Chelsea-Atletico game, because I think it is the big talking point in England right now. It's a tremendous performance by Chelsea to dominate the runaway leaders in Spain like they did. Does that result affect your confidence going into the game? And, how do you think we stop this Chelsea team if we can?
Well, we can say runaway leaders in Spain all we want, but the reality is La Liga's fallen apart really as a league. We've seen Barcelona get dominated in their first game in the Champions League. Real Madrid last night, I don't really want to speak on them because that game was not corrupt, but you could tell some of the refereeing decisions were just horrendous, awful decisions. So they got away with one. That's what I'll say. Last night they got away with one. And Atletico, they struggled in their two games before the Chelsea game. They lost at home to Levante and drew away to them as well. So I think the gap's gone down from, it could have been 13 points for their game in hand, and it's now now gone to a stage where I think it might just be 3 come the end of next week because Real Atletico play. So the runaway leaders is a bit too far, I think, in terms of Atletico. So I wasn't actually massively surprised at the Chelsea result at all. Simeone has a specific style of play in terms of defensive. It works sometimes it doesn't. The interesting game will be at Stamford Bridge because he'll have to come out and kind of change his approach to the game. So, but yeah, I'm not reading into that massively. Chelsea it was a good game for Chelsea. Played fantastic, kept the ball a lot, but they're there to be got at. And I know, Southampton. Okay, Southampton's goal with Minamino, that was just the most basic through ball you're ever going to get, and the 3 defenders were split apart. So if it's Christensen and not Thiago Silva playing, whether Thiago Silva is going to be fit enough, it doesn't look like he will be, then I'd back Rashford and even Dan James. I'd back him against that back 3 because they're not rapid. Rudiger's got a mistake in him. We've seen it over the last few years. That's why Lampard kind of fell out with him. And the back 3 is not that quick. So if it is a back 3, I'd target them. I'd go at them, be direct. And as I said, I'm not optimistic, but we'll see what happens because this can be the game that kickstarts us in terms of playing against the top sides, or it could be the game that shows that we're not quite ready for those kind of games, and see what happens.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, obviously we'll talk about the tactical setup later, but I just want to come to you, Nischal, just to sort of give us an overview on Tuchel's system. Obviously, he's revolutionised this Chelsea team since he's come in. There's players coming in who previously didn't look anything like the player they can be under Lampard. Obviously, Alonso's a big part of that. He looks like a player reborn now. What do you make of the Tuchel system overall? Obviously, I'll go a little bit more in depth, but do you think it's sustainable and it's something that Chelsea can flourish under?
Absolutely. I'll make one quick point before I get into Tuchel. You said it about exploring the back 3, about their speed. Absolutely, yeah, you can do that. But remember the last time Chelsea played a back 3 against United, we won and we got to the FA Cup final. So just remember that. Tuchel's system is very impressive and something I've really enjoyed watching. First game to make a really bold switch to a back three, something we hadn't seen in months, to be honest. I had a lot of respect for that, and it's clearly worked. And something we know about Tuchel as a manager is that he is very tactically flexible. We might see a 3-4-3 this week, but if you look at the Barnsley game, for example, we went from a 3-4-3 to a 4-2-3-1 to a 4-3-3. It wasn't the best performance, wasn't the best result, but at the end of the day, we were flexible enough to change and adapt and get a result at the end of the day. I've been really impressed, like I said, with Tuchel. With the players frozen out, it has been surprising to see so many players come back into the fold. But of course, it's a fresh start. He said that, and he made that clear right from the very beginning. And we've seen Jorginho come in, become integral in his system. We've seen Marcos Alonso come back after 4 or 5 months. Even Kepa Arrizabalaga made his first league start in 4 months, back-to-back clean sheets. That would be unthinkable if Lampard had stayed on. But we've got so many of these situations where frozen out players have come back into the fold and shown they still have a place and they still have a future at Chelsea. Is a testament to Tuchel coming in, showing there's a new lease of life and showing that this is a new era at Chelsea. Everyone misses Frank Lampard, there's no denying that. Whether we liked his results or not, he is a club legend, he always will be. And that was a difficult breakup, and that is the same for every single Chelsea fan. But with a future now, we had to see changes. We saw a tactical change, we saw a personnel change, and the fact that we're in the early days, we haven't lost a game, we've conceded twice, we've beaten Tottenham, Atletico, and ahead of a very difficult run, like I said earlier. All the pieces have fallen into the puzzle perfectly. So it's looking very positive for Chelsea.
Well, just sort of dive into it then. Can you explain what Thomas Tuchel's system is? Obviously, you see the numbers, you see that Chelsea are averaging, sort of 70% possession per game. But, just what exactly does Tuchel do to implement this system?
Tuchel's main tactical approach is attacking football. If you lose the ball, you go back and win it straight away, like the gegenpress of Liverpool, going out, attacking, being ruthless in every chance. We haven't seen that as much in terms of scorelines. We haven't scored more than 2 goals in the game under Tuchel so far. The biggest winning margin is 2-0 as well. But we have seen the early signs of that. Playing a 3-4-3 was a big focus on the back three, driving forward and starting the plays. The ball playing defender in the middle, usually Thiago Silva. Recently, Andreas Christensen, who's been great. The key for me is the midfield pivot, the double sixes, which is currently Jorginho and Mateo Kovacic. They are absolutely integral to that system because where Kovacic can drive forward and make those powerful runs into the box and start an attack, Jorginho is there to protect the defence, cover up, and really guard that midfield area. So they work brilliantly together. And as I've said in previous streams and I've said just previously, Jorginho and Kovacic, they're not the most glamorous partnership, but they are the most efficient we have at Chelsea right now. The wing-backs as well, very important in the system, similar to what we saw of Antonio Conte, Marcos Alonso, Callum Hudson-Odoi, driving forward, making those overlaps. And in the front three, it's interesting because we see it as a front three, but it's really 2 inverted wingers attacking forwards and then a central striker. We've got Timo Werner playing on the left, of course, driving forward into space. Mason Mount as well, really roaming and flourishing from all that freedom he has up top, and then supporting the central striker, which has either been Olivier Giroud and Tammy Abraham. So every part of that team is integral to the results and the way Tuchel wants to play with his formation and his philosophy. But absolutely the key is that midfield. And that's why I'm really interested to see that midfield battle on Sunday.
Nischal, with the formation that you've got, does it concern you that you bought so many attackers in the summer and you've kind of taken away one attacker in the sense that, you've got, say, Reece James or Hudson-Odoi's now been converted into a wing-back, but you've taken away one attacking position out of that team and you bought, 3 or 4? You've got 3 strikers in your side and Ziyech, and then you've got Havertz and, you've got all of these players. How are you going to accommodate all of them when you've got less forwards to kind of, go up front essentially in the games with a 5 at the back?
Something we're blessed with is squad depth and all these different options. We've got Pulisic, Ziyech, Hudson-Odoi, Mount, Havertz to go on about all these attacking options. So it is sometimes concerning to see some of these players out, but we have to remember Christian Pulisic and Hakim Ziyech are in very poor form right now. Kai Havertz is still recovering from injury and even the long-term effects of COVID, to be honest. But the main thing we have to remember is this is not the final finished product of Chelsea. This isn't going to be the final formation we'll see in 2-3 years. This won't be the final 11 we'll see in even a year. Things are going to change. We're going to see personnel change. We'll see a fresh philosophy, or a fresh tactic, I should say, with Tuchel. This isn't the final product. And I can understand why there's maybe a concern about we're seeing less attackers. We have 5 attackers, usually the attacking 8s, and then the front 3. But we can think of those attacking 8s, those positions being moved to the wing backs. So in that way, we still do have 5 attackers, just more defensive and wider rather than in that midfield 3. But it's a very valid point.
In terms of that, in terms of the kind of strike force that you brought in the summer, you spent what, 200 million on players. Is it not a big concern that these are top players coming in, and you already had a kind of a good forward line as it was? So if Mason Mount's not playing, obviously you got Havertz, but vice versa, one of them will want to play pretty much every game because they're both top players. So is it not a worry that come the summer, some players might have been frozen out a little bit and they'll think, hold on a second, I came here to start every game. I was brought in for 40, 50 million pounds, or in Havertz's case, 80 million pounds. And if he can't get a start over Mason Mount, surely that's going to be a cue for saying, surely I want out, because the first teamers will want to be in the first starting 11 every single week.
Not at all for me. Everyone knows we're really, really early into Tuchel's era. He's not even completed his first half season. We're not going to see this kind of reevaluation or players wanting to leave until the summer. And even then, everyone knows they have a place in the Chelsea squad. Players being brought back from being frozen out like Alonso. As I said earlier, players getting a new lease of life, Jorginho and Mateo Kovacic. I don't think anyone's going to have that mentality where if they don't play enough for this half of the season, they're going to want to go out. They know that there's a long, long way to go. And the major reevaluation will be in the summer. Just because someone isn't playing as much right now, Kai Havertz, for example, doesn't mean he doesn't have a long-term future with the club. He's on record signing. He's still very young, 21, will be 22 in the summer. He's got a long way to go. And he understands he's not playing right now because of injuries, because of the formation and the shape that Tuchel wants to play. But he knows he'll be in his future plans. And every player is in that situation now.
But Chelsea fans know. What about Abraham? Abraham has been talked about by Chelsea fans as he's a good player, but I don't think he's quite at that level yet. But he will want to start, and if Giroud keeps scoring and Werner keeps scoring, you can rotate 2 top forwards, but I don't think you can rotate 3, because I think that's dangerous, because one of them is not going to get enough game time. So surely you'll be looking at a few players that will want to leave if they're not first in their position.
Absolutely, but that's a long-term solution. That's a long-term problem for the summer, for the end of the year. Right now, we're focused on getting top 4, prioritising and going as far as we can in the Champions League, and doing as well as we can after what's been a very tumultuous season. Tammy Abraham has been in the news recently because of the Erling Haaland advancements and rumours with him being linked to Chelsea, saying that if Haaland comes in, Tammy Abraham is very likely to go. And no one can blame him for that, because we already have very tough competition up front. We've got a World Cup winner in Giroud. We've got a lethal striker on his best day in Werner. And we've got a top goal scorer from this season and last season in Abraham. Each striker has their own claim and their own stake to be in our leader number 9. But there's a lot of competition. And everyone's had their chance. All of them are in double figures now. Tammy Abraham's our top goal scorer. He's not starting as much. He knows that. And of course, he's been taken off twice at half time. And it will be a difficult few months. And he has to reevaluate. His contract runs out next summer, but these few months are crucial for every single player proving themselves, and no one's going to give up and say, right, I'm going in the summer, can't be bothered to play. Everyone is going to be fighting and doing their best to prove themselves under Tuchel, because we've seen that from the early days already with the players who've come in and so many players who are in contention to be playing. So whether Tammy Abraham is up for that fight, I have no doubts that he is. He will be fighting for that number 9 shirt until the very day he leaves the club. But it is a difficult situation. He's got tough competition. And if he doesn't... Look, I think he's a good striker, but he does have a lot of parts of his games to improve. And I think he will admit that. And the ideal situation at Chelsea would be for us to give him another season, let him really hit his stride, come into his element, and become a 20-goal-a-season striker. But that's not the Chelsea we know. We just spent 50 million on Timo Werner this summer. We're now chasing Erling Haaland just because he's available, not because we need a striker, but because he's on the market. And it looks like the club will be prioritising getting a new target man. So with all the factors coming into it, Tammy Abraham, he is in a difficult situation, and it won't be easy, but we will believe in him, and we know what he is capable of.
One final quick one. Ben Chilwell. I think there's a bit of an issue going on there in the sense that Alonso's been brought back in because he's better suited to left wing back. Let's be honest, in terms of pace and goal scoring and attributes that he's got. Ben Chilwell will be pining for that first kind of place in the England left back position for this summer. And it looks like Luke Shaw, I don't know whether James would agree, Luke Shaw might have overtaken him in terms of who's preferred for that position. Do you think that's going to be a bit of a problem for Chilwell in the sense that this system, it doesn't seem to suit him at all? And will that, be a massive frustration for him?
Absolutely. Any player who's not playing will be disappointed. And Tuchel spoke about that, saying he knows that Chilwell wants to be in the England squad. He's got his eyes on Euro 2020. But if he's not playing right now, that becomes much more difficult for him. And I'd agree with you that in current form, probably Luke Shaw is above him because Luke Shaw's playing week in, week out and doing well. Ben Chilwell has barely played under Tuchel, so, absolutely fair comparison. I think it's natural for him to be worried. But like I said, no player has their career over at Chelsea right now. Every single player is in contention. Every single player has the potential and has the chance to play for Chelsea. Just because Alonso is playing right now does not mean Chilwell is gone, he's dusted, and that £50 million has gone to waste. We're seeing this in the system right now because, as you said, Alonso's the better wing-back, but Chilwell's the better full-back. And we will be changing formations. We will be changing systems. There's no doubt about that. We won't see a 3-4-3 for the next 10 years. But if we have those options where we can play Alonso as a first-choice wing-back and Chilwell as a first-choice full-back, that works perfectly. But he does have to fight for his competition. It won't be easy. And he does have to step up, and he does really have to claim his stake in that team if he wants to make the play for Euro 2020.
Yeah, fair enough. I think to add on that as well, from an outsider point of view, Chilwell's still got years on him to not reinvent himself, but develop his game into becoming a competent wing back as well. Obviously, there are differences between the two play styles, aren't there, between a full back and a wing back? And obviously, Alonso's not getting any younger. He's approaching 30 now, unless he's already past 30. I'm not quite sure, but
he's 30. He's 31 in December.
Well, there you go. He's not going to be around forever, is he? And Chilwell's a lot younger than people probably think. So I don't think it's the end of the road for Chilwell at all. But I'll bring up a comment. Go on.
Sorry. Yeah, carry on.
Oh, I'm moving on. So if you want to carry on,
I was just gonna ask you about surely. So a player plays in the now essentially when they're in their career. Ben Chilwell has been playing under Frank Lampard for the last 6 months essentially. Ever since he's come into the club, he's been first choice, no debate. Alonso hasn't even played. It's like, okay, you're gone. Whereas it's kind of been a kind of role reversal. Whereas Chilwell probably thought, my Euro 2020 spot is nailed on if I keep playing under Frank Lampard. So surely that's going to be, we can talk about his future and his career, whatever. Players want to play in big tournaments. And if he's not going to be the starting fullback for England, and Luke Shaw is because Chilwell's not played, surely that's going to be, I'm not going to say he's going to hold it against the manager, but players don't, they don't take these things lightly. And it is his career. So if he's not starting, there's going to be tension between the manager and him because he's been frozen out from a position that he was guaranteed to essentially, it's not even competition now. Luke Shaw at the moment, because he's playing every week and is playing well, he's first choice, no doubt for me at the moment. So if it continues like this, surely it's going to damage his career and his relationship with, Thomas Tuchel, surely.
See, it won't damage his career because he's got a long way, though.
Yeah, I think realistically as well
with Tuchel.
You've got to look at the system Tuchel's playing as well. If he wants to play wing backs, Alonso's the better wing back. Alonso's doing well for the team. Chilwell will understand that. Surely, I think unless he's just some spoiled little brat, he'll just get his head down and try and better himself. I think Chilwell can't have any complaints.
He's been brought in though, specifically to fill that left back position for 50 million. Yeah, but he was brought in to fill a position, and within 6 months he's now not in that position. So the frustration was that.
It's because Chelsea aren't playing that position anymore. Chelsea don't play a left back; they play a wing back.
But players don't see it. He might see it as it's fine, competition, whatever. But he might see it as, you know, a massive frustration, because it could be his first big tournament essentially, and it looks like he might not even get the starting place. So that could create tension. I'm just saying.
I don't
There's
think
one big difference, sorry. If I can just step in very quickly. There's one big difference. He was with Lampard signing. Lampard is not the manager of Chelsea anymore. No one predicted that. No one could have called would he be sacked in January. You know, he could have predicted it, but there was nothing certain that said Lampard would go in January. He was his main target left back, and that was fine. Brought him in for 50 million, fixed that hole, and he's done really well at left back. But when Lampard was sacked, and in that period of January where we really saw the demise of Lampard and Chelsea, Chilwell was in a good form, and he's not been in amazing form recently. So, you know, you can argue all about Chilwell being disappointed about not playing, not in contention for the England squad, and I completely agree, and I completely get that, because every footballer wants to be playing, and especially if you've been brought in for 50 million and you've been the starting left back and brought in specifically to fill that void. Absolutely, you have every right to be angered, but stuff has changed. Before, we were top of the league and we lost 5 of our 8 last league games. We dropped to 10th. Chilwell wasn't playing well. He was making mistake after mistake. Didn't play well against Leicester, which was a final nail in the coffin. So as much as Chilwell can blame Lampard being sacked, Tuchel coming in and dropping him from the starting 11, Chilwell also has to take some responsibility, because he wasn't necessarily playing well. If he was a star player and our best player like Mason Mount has been, you know, Mason Mount will not take any blame or responsibility for Lampard being sacked, because in those weeks building up to Lampard's departure, there was one player giving his all every single game, and that was Mason Mount. Chilwell was not at that level every game, and it's cynical and it's critical, but it's honest. If he wants to be in that England squad, if he wants to be starting for Chelsea, get into the national team squad for the Euros, he has got to perform and he has got to step up. Simple as.
But it's weird. It's just weird how the tables have turned, in the sense that it's gone from him being a nailed-on choice for the Euros a couple of months ago, nailed on, going to start regardless. Doesn't matter how well Shaw plays or whatever, he will start, to, yeah, he probably won't now. You know, if it continues in this way, he probably won't. So, you know, right, a player's got a 15-year career, essentially, you know, from the age of 18 to 32 or 33 before the national team stopped considering them essentially for selection. And he'll have 5 tournaments probably in that period of time, maybe 6. So one of them looks like it might even pass him by, you know, and he's 23 or 24 already. Maybe younger, I don't know. But one of them's going to pass him by already. So I'm just saying that'll be a massive frustration for him, surely. But yeah.
Yeah, maybe. But, you know, just to move on then, obviously we made the point earlier, Nischal, Nischal made the point earlier about how important this Chelsea midfield has been, this midfield too. Now, United have got a lot of injuries in midfield, obviously, in terms of actual if we don't include attacking midfielders, we've got 2 centre midfielders fit, and they're Fred and Matic for this game, unless, you know, a miracle happens and either Van der Beek or McTominay get themselves fit. So, Henry, how do you think we combat this Chelsea midfield just with the legs that we actually have out on the pitch? Because it was going to be a difficult task anyway, and Fred and Matic are by far our first choice partnership. So, is this something that worries you, and how do you think we cope with that?
We do what we normally do. We sit back, allow Chelsea our possession, we nab the ball off them and counter-attack. That's what we do with every other team, you know. I think so. Thomas Tuchel found out firsthand how devastating this United counter-attack can be when he was playing, you know, when he was with PSG at the start of the season, because we didn't go over there and spawn out a lucky result. It was pretty much played tactically to perfection in terms of what Ole Gunnar Solskjaer did in that game. So, but we have got a problem in the sense that if McTominay isn't available, then we've got an issue there, because we'll look to sit back, because that's what we do against the top sides, you know, and you know, it's pretty much, you know, nailed on that Chelsea are going to have all the possession, because that's what they do anyway. So it's going to have to be sitting deep, not allowing the space for, you know, for Mount to operate in, and you know, Werner always looks for space in behind, and if we can deny him that space, you know, the ability to make those runs into the box, then it's a win-win. And I think Eric Bailly starting would be a massive, massive boost for us if we can get him starting in that game. Because I know Werner's quick, but one-on-one, Eric Bailly just seems to turn into turbo legs and get back and defend because he is rapid. So, yeah, it will be sitting back and counter-attacking and denying the space. Jorginho can play all the 5-yard sideways passes he wants. But, it's not going to impact us if it's on the edge of the box. So that'll be the game plan. I'm pretty sure that'll be the game plan. And then counter-attack with Rashford. I reckon Dan James will start if he's, obviously he's in good form at the moment. Weird saying that because I never thought I'd say that 6 months ago that Dan James is one of our best form players. And I reckon Greenwood will start as well because Martial's in no form whatsoever. And if Cavani's not fully fit, then it'll be those as the front three. And yeah, that'll be the game plan. And I absolutely back our front three against the back three of Chelsea if they're playing a back three.
I think that the problem we're going to face, though, is it's still well and good saying we're going to play on the counter, but you're going to need someone in that middle who can distribute the ball to start the counter-attacks. It's pretty obvious Bruno's going to be marked out of the game again. He always is by any team that's competent enough in defending. So you're going to need Matic or Fred to take that responsibility. Fred's distribution is championship
level. Did you not
witness
his assist for Rashford in the Sociedad game? That was one long pass in behind, bang.
Chelsea won't be that open though. Sociedad played a high line with slow defenders. It was just a stupid setup, and Chelsea won't be that ignorant to what we can do.
The Minamino goal was a carbon copy of that. You say that the Minamino goal was a carbon copy. One straight ball, straight through the middle. Two defenders split. Didn't quite know where they were. Minamino gets in behind, goal. So honestly, playing against a back three, I know people say it's difficult, and it is difficult because you've got to get the spaces and positions right. But if you get those positions right, you can rip a back three to shreds, absolutely rip them apart. And as I said, I'm not hugely confident because we don't do well against these sides. But if we can get it right in terms of, Fred's distribution, I know you mentioned it's been poor, and it has. But that was simply roll out from Henderson, Fred turn, one straight pass through the middle. And if you can get Rashford one-on-one with Christensen, Rudiger, or Azpilicueta, it's going to be a Demichelis moment all over again because he will just tear them apart because he's quicker than all of them combined. So I think Chelsea will be more concerned in terms of our counter-attack and especially us away from home as well. I think we still haven't lost away from home in over a year now. So I think people are forgetting that we're awful at Old Trafford. If this was Old Trafford, I would not back us at all. But it's away from home, and we counter-attack. That's what we do. So it'll be interesting if Chelsea can stop our front line and Fernandes. Fair enough, you got the game. But stopping that front line and Fernandes is a completely different story altogether because it's been proven it's very difficult to do.
Fair enough. Well, I'll come back to you then, Nischal. We'll move on to where Chelsea really thrive. Just to round us off for the game, how do you think you'll set up for the game? And then on top of that, who do you think will offer the most threat for you, or where do you think will offer the most threat for you? Whether that's a midfield pivot or what?
It'll be a 3-4-3. I don't see us changing. I don't see a need to change when we're beaten in 8 and just be like, let's go. As I've said, the midfield battle, I'm really interested to see how Jorginho and Kovacic come up against, whether it's your midfield of Matic and I think it's Fred was the other one you said, who's going to be playing, or whether it's that midfield battle against United attackers. But I'm really interested. I think our key players will be our two attacking, wide players, put it that way, either side of a striker. So I think this will be Timo Werner and Mason Mount on Sunday, and seeing how they combat your defence and move into the channels, because where they are, they're not out and out wingers, but they're not left and right forwards. They're kind of in between. They have a lot of space to roam at, because where we had before, we had the space with attacking 8, which would be Mason Mount and either Mateo Kovacic or Kai Havertz. But that space has now been vacated. We've got the defensive 6s. So there's a huge gap there, and that is what is occupied by the attacking wingers. So they have a lot of space going forward and attacking in between the channels. And especially against your defence, like we said, I think it can be a good defence on your day. But if I'm being very honest, I don't think it's the strongest defence you have, although we've seen. And it's something that Chelsea can exploit. The same way you can exploit our weaker back three, Chelsea can exploit United's often inconsistent, sometimes with lapses of concentration defence. So those two battles are the ones I'm looking out for, especially in attack. And I'm really looking forward to. It'll be a lot of interesting tactical battles between the midfield, between the defensive approaches, especially Bruno Fernandes, because, and I'm going to bring this up, his record against Big Six is not very good, and you have to admit that. So I'm interested to hear what you guys think as well about that. Why doesn't he perform against the Big Six, and what could be different on Sunday against Chelsea?
Yeah, well, me and him, we'll cover that in a second. I just wanted to add one more thing about the Chelsea team. Do you think we'll see Callum Hudson-Odoi? Because obviously there's been a little bit of, there's sort of nothing speculation, but he was subbed on and then subbed back off recently, and I think Reece James played the game after, didn't he? So do you think we'll see him reinstated, or do you think we'll see Reece James?
Well, he started on Tuesday. We knew it was just about performance. He's an important player under Tuchel, and he's a huge fan of him. I knew it was never going to be a long-term riff. Callum Hudson-Odoi wants to go. It was one decision. It was one incident where Tuchel wasn't happy. He brought him off. Everyone was shocked, but we accepted it and we said, fine, okay. But it's not a long-term thing. Hudson-Odoi started in Bucharest the other day. I think he played well. Had a really fascinating battle with Thomas Lemar on that right-hand side. And I think it's a nailed-on starter for this game as well. Because, like we said, what we've seen from him as a wing-back, if you rewind a month, no one knew he could play as a wing-back, but he has been outstanding there and one of our best players under Tuchel in that position. And especially against United, like we say, we've got those two attacking wingers, inverted forwards. As you said, it's kind of hard to nail them down. But we'll just call them attacking tens for now. You've got them making the space in and around, but then that creates the space out wide for the wingers and the wing-backs to overlap and really drive forward, and especially with Hudson-Odoi on, I think it'll be Luke Shaw's channel, or maybe probably not Alex Tellers, but Luke Shaw. That's going to be a brilliant battle. So Hudson-Odoi, absolutely fine. I'm pretty sure he should start. He should be a nailed-on starter.
Hopefully. I do enjoy watching Hudson-Odoi. Now, Henry, I'll sort of ask you a similar question. How do we set up against this three at the back that Chelsea play, and where do you think our threat comes from?
Well, the biggest threat from us obviously is Fernandes in the pockets, because I know Nischal mentioned about the top six kind of issue he's had, I guess, but it wasn't the case last year, and this year he probably hasn't been performing as much against the top six because they pay us more respect. And I know people will laugh at that and stuff, but it is true, because there's always one or two players from a top six side that mark Fernandes in a game. Always. They'll kick him, they'll pinch him, they'll do whatever just to stop his kind of rhythm, his flow in the game. So, yeah, I think that in terms of Bruno, he's not been fantastic, but again, you never know with him. So you could say he's been terrible recently, and then he'll pop up with a 30-yard worldie against you. You just don't know with him. You never know what's going to happen. Our threat, I think if Luke Shaw and Wan-Bissaka, I know Wan-Bissaka's not great going forward, but if they can push those wing-backs slightly further back and be higher up, I think we can cause them a few problems. And I think Ole Gunnar Solskjaer might, he might look to sit back, or he might look to press a bit higher on this Chelsea side, because, Southampton played quite a good pressing game against you guys, I think, in terms of they're not a fantastic side. They're not technically brilliant, but they do press and they do cause problems. And that's why, you didn't score the 3 or 4 goals that we kind of expected you to. So, he could take a leaf out of Hasenhüttl's book and decide to go for him. But, our attacking threat is obviously our front three as well. If we can get Rashford one-on-one with anyone, I'll back him, just because of his pace and because of, if he's direct, he causes a lot of problems for defenders. There's nothing worse than being a defender and having a striker or just a quick winger running directly at you, because you've got one of two options. You either stand off and keep standing off and let him make the first move, or you make the first move and risk bringing him down. So if we can be direct, the same with Dan James. And I think this is why I think he'll probably start, because he's direct with people. If he's up against Marcus Alonso, I'm sorry, but Alonso's either going to bully him or he's going to knock it around him and it will be game over. So, it will be an interesting battle, those kind of the wing backs or even the left and right centre halves against the wingers. So, yeah, the battles will be interesting on both ends of the pitch. I agree with Nischal in terms of this could be a 0-0, it could be an end-to-end game. We just don't know at this stage, because Chelsea aren't conceding many goals. We are, but then we're scoring quite a few goals at the moment. If you think about it, 7 in our last 2 games is, it's not easy to do. Even against the Sociedad side, 4 is not easy to score against that kind of side. So, yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting both ends of the pitch.
Yeah, definitely. I think my opinion on the Fernandes thing is he's obviously not good against big 6 sides. He gets a few goal involvements here and there. Leicester was a game where he really thrived, which I'm not really sure how, because they employ probably the best defensive midfielder in the world on form in Ndidi. So that one confused me a little bit. But I think he sort of comes unstuck by the fact that we don't have anyone else that the opposition really worry about enough to man mark. I think it's easy to man mark. It's easy to put 2 players on Bruno Fernandes when you don't have to really worry about anyone else, do you? There's Rashford, but if he's not having that kind of game.
If Pogba was fit, I'd back us 90% in this game, genuinely, because of the power, the pace. I know he's not fit, but I'm just saying, when we've got those 2 fit, it becomes a completely different problem for other teams, because it's easy to mark one player out of a game. You just stick 2 players on him, but you can't stick 3 players and go between 2 players that are top quality and one can produce. So that will be our problem in the Chelsea game. We won't have the Pogba spraying the passes or creating if Fernandes doesn't. So, Van der Beek's not fit either. So I don't know. Yeah.
See, even when Pogba plays, though, he's not someone you need to specifically go out and put 2 men on, because we employ him that far deep on the pitch that he just sprays the balls from deep, and he's not that much of a threat to the Chelsea goal. I think.
Ask Sean Dyche and Scott Parker about that one, mate.
Well, yeah, obviously the smaller teams he does well against, but if you're against a Chelsea or someone like that, he's not someone you desperately need to go and put 2 men on to stop, whereas Fernandes is. And I think if we had another attacking player where it was the case of you have to put 2 players on him or he will destroy you, I think that'd free up Bruno Fernandes. But he's a victim of the fact that we need him to play well to win, and teams know that. So if they stop Bruno Fernandes playing well, they can do as much as they physically can to stop him playing well, and they'll be fine. That's it. You've won the game, because we don't have that.
Kovacic against Fernandes, I think physicality is massive.
I think he's still got a few things to learn in terms of actually making space for himself as well. Obviously, he wants the ball all the time and everything like that. But you look at your David Silvas and players like that. He doesn't pick up those sort of positions. He doesn't actively, he obviously does make space for himself, but he's not he's not top quality in terms of that. I think we have seen against big teams, he is pretty easy to mark out of the game. So I think that's a problem that we have as well.
But he can turn up at any moment. If you got a free kick on the edge of the box, it's only going to one person. That's Bruno Fernandes. So, we can talk about his lack of goal involvements all we want. But I think now it's got to a stage where it's 56 goal involvements in 58 games for United. And as a player coming in from the Portuguese league, that is absolutely phenomenal. For regardless of who it's against, Chelsea fans might write him off for this game and say, "Oh, it's against top 6 side." But then we found that when you write this guy off, so against Liverpool in the FA Cup, everyone's going, we're playing awful. Bring Fernandes on there, we're going, oh yeah, he's going to do nothing. Comes on, scores the winner. So if you write this guy off or say he doesn't have an impact against the top 6 sides, he usually goes and proves people wrong, because his attitude is one of spite towards other people. It's like, you're not going to tell me what I can and can't do. So we'll see what happens. And if he drops a stinker, I'm wrong. If he drops a stinker, I'm wrong. But if he scores or gets an assist, call me after the game.
Fair enough. Well, we'll move on from the game then. Obviously, there's one other thing we wanted to talk about, because obviously it's not every day you do get to talk to someone who's reported live from the grounds with no crowd. So obviously you have Nischal. You go to Chelsea somewhat regularly now, don't you? You're in press conferences as well. So just wanted to sort of ask how it came about to start with. How did you find yourself in this position?
I've been working with a company called BComs, which stands for Black Collective of Media and Sport, for about a year and a half now, since September 2019. And their main focus is to improve diversity and representation of underrepresented communities in the sports media. So that's people of colour, the LGBTQ plus community, and women specifically. And we've been working together over the last year or so, going to master classes and having opportunities. And this opportunity came up, and they invited me to go to Stamford Bridge. So I've been at Burnley, and I was at Newcastle last week. So it's been through very brilliant to be doing that with, and also raising awareness of the importance of diversity in the media, because in this country, we do have a very diverse country, especially in London, where I'm from. But when you look at the media boxes and press boxes in any football stadium across the ground, it's predominantly white males. And while, that may be a representation of a majority of the country, there's the minority who's completely underrepresented, and we're not seeing enough of these people. And if you can't see someone who looks like you, you're not going to think that you can be them. So we focus on really increasing diversity and giving an opportunity to these underrepresented communities, such as myself as a person of colour.
Well, just to sort of follow up on that, it's obviously not a nice thing to talk about, but I saw, when you obviously got the opportunity to go to Chelsea, so there was a little bit of abuse online towards you, whether that was through jealousy or whatever. Now, obviously, it's obviously not nice, but how do you deal with that? Because I thought you dealt with it incredibly well. I thought, it was very pleasing for me to watch how you dealt with it. But did it have a big impact on you that day, and how did you manage to deal with it so well?
The $1 million question: how do you deal with racism? Unfortunately, as a person of colour, it's something that you have to deal with and you have to accept in your life, whether you're in London, whether you're in Manchester, whether you're in Derby, for example. It's something that you're going to have to face and you will have to accept. And I've been lucky that I haven't had to face it as much. I've been generally fortunate that I haven't had to face it every day like I know fellow people of colour have, but it doesn't mean I don't get it, and it doesn't mean I don't receive racist abuse, and it came about from a tweet I did the day before, just a normal tweet about Chelsea, nothing more, just my opinion, and it was onslaughts of, not outright racist abuse in most cases, but subtle and casual racism, microaggressions, and lots of these comments directed to me, and I didn't see most of them at first. It was my friends who sent them to me. Then I saw them, and you do try laugh them off, and generally, that's what I did. You don't let it get to you, but it does affect you, and it's a natural thing, knowing that just because your skin is a different color, because it's darker than what the society's norm is for the skin color, you're treated differently, and you receive different treatment and different response from people who are closed-minded and just idiots. So it's not easy. I won't stand there and say, I don't get affected by racism, it doesn't bother me at all, I thrive on it, because that's not true. And any person of colour will tell you they're tired. We're tired of having to face these problems of racism. We're tired of having to put up with this. And like you said, first of all, thank you for your comments about how I dealt with it. I kind of just said, look, you're racially abusing me at home behind some profile pictures. I'm at Stamford Bridge. You're one of the people racially abusing me. I don't want to name them because I don't want to give them attention or any sort of publicity. But one of the people abusing me had a profile picture of Thomas Tuchel, and I interviewed him the same day. So it just levels to that, showing that while you racially abuse me, I'm doing my thing. I'm doing what I can. And that links back to why BComs is so important, because we don't have this representation. And we see in the media as well, the mainstream media, there's a lot of racism, there's a lot of discrimination, especially towards black players, because the majority of journalists are white people who don't have the positive, and this is not generalizing everyone, this is a very small minority who I don't agree with, but people who victimize and go for these people of color players in every way they do, like we do with Meghan Markle, like we do with Raheem Sterling, like we do with Marcus Rashford, they'll go and do everything to tear them down. And that's something you have to face. So, it's important that we fight this fight of racism. We come together and we really do strive to make it a better place to live in.
Nischal, how do you not absolutely lose your shit at people like that? Like, if I was in your position, and I got a comment like that. I saw some of the comments, and it would just fill me with rage. That how on earth can social media and stuff allow this to happen? How do you keep your calm in your response or ignoring these people? How can you keep your calm in a situation where so many wouldn't? Honestly, so many would lash out and be aggressive towards these people, and I'd probably be one of them. But how can you keep your calm in a situation like that where it's so racist? It really is. How can you keep your cool?
I'm not the sort of person who comes back by fighting or sending abuse back, or like if there was someone who came for me in the street, for example, I wouldn't fight back. I wouldn't be that sort of person. But with stuff like racism online, I think one of the things I've learned as a person of color and as a journalist is that you have to have a thick skin. And it's a fact, as I've been wanting to be a journalist since I was 7, really young age. And from the very start, I've always been told, you need to be thick-skinned. This is a tough industry. And when I was younger, I thought it meant just generally as a journalist. And as I've grown up more, I'm starting to realize that not just as a journalist, but as a person of color journalist, as a brown journalist, as a Swiss Indian journalist, how do I not lose my rag? Honestly, it's about not giving them a reaction they want. They want a reaction out of you. They want you to be livid and coming for you and starting a petty argument. Generally, I see them, I shrug my shoulders and I just keep scrolling. I don't let it settle in. I don't dwell on it. I don't look at the comment for an hour and start thinking, what have I done wrong? Why am I getting this? You have to just brush off your shoulders. And it's really hard to say that because it's not the same for everyone. Some people get vile abuse day in, day out. Footballers, journalists, fans, anyone. And they have to face that barrage all the time. I face it regularly, maybe not as regularly, but I still face racist abuse. And it's not to a point where you have to accept it, because you should never accept racism. And you have to stand up for yourself like I did, because I couldn't let that go unnoticed. But you have to be able to realize and understand it's a minority. We need to fight that, but at the end of the day, for every racist comment and racist piece of abuse I got, I was getting hundreds of messages of support and admiration and well wishes in my DMs and my mentions of people backing me and condemning them. So it's really hard because the minority is so vocal and it's so out there and it's so easy to just go into my DMs and racially abuse me, and the same with anyone. But I think the thick skin is the most important thing. But at the end of the day, this is one of the adversities I'm going to face as a person of color journalist. It's sad, it's depressing, it's horrible that just because my skin is darker, I'm going to be treated differently. But I have to fight hard, I have to work 10 times harder to get over this, and I promise you I will.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, we'll lift the mood a little bit. Obviously, we'll talk about what it's actually like in an empty stadium. Now, you can listen to a match without crowd noise, etc. But I can't imagine it's quite the same as being there. So, is there anything? Well, there's obviously going to be differences, but what are the big differences that you notice, and sort of in a way the advantages of not having a crowd there? Do you think?
My main difference is going to the games as a journalist rather than a fan. Of course, massive Chelsea fan. And having to go there, I can't be chanting all game long. I can't be celebrating the goals. I can't be applauding the players off. So I think that's the first thing, having to remember you're there to do your job. You're there to be professional. And, I've done that. I've had to do that. But that's something that's very interesting. In terms of being behind closed doors, it's a really unique experience because watching it on TV, it feels weird. And I think I've got used to it, but it still does feel very peculiar. But being there, where it's just completely empty, no sounds, it's surreal, but it's also so sad because, when I'm walking to the stadium from a tube station, I'm always going to my friends, I'm meeting them, we're chatting about the game, and that's such a big part of the matchday experience for any fan. But making that walk by myself, going in by myself, not talking to anyone like a fan, that's definitely a big difference. But the main one, like you said, no fans, and you hear everything, and that's a really fascinating thing because very rarely in a game will you actually hear word for word what they're saying. You'll hear the shouts. You'll hear a manager on the touchline or the defender shouting, but you won't be able to make out what they hear. But word for word, I can hear what they're saying. Burnley and Newcastle, the two teams I've seen play at Stamford Bridge, they're very vocal, very angry at certain decisions. Swear words going all around. Steve Bruce and Sean Dyche even, very vocal, very excited managers. And Thomas Tuchel is the one I was really interested in, seeing his management style and seeing him up close. What I've concluded is that he's got the passion of Antonio Conte, but not the same craziness. He's got the calmness of Frank Lampard, but not the same silence. He's a very unique manager because he absorbs the game and he watches it, but you will hear him. You'll hear him shouting across to Callum Hudson-Odoi, telling him to get back. You'll hear him shouting at the back three to push up and keep the play going. You'll hear him shouting at Timo Werner to keep his head up. And it's really interesting seeing how he engages with the game. And for me, how he plays the game. And it's the same with any manager, any player. And it's, massive privilege to be able to hear him uninterrupted, completely clearly. And you're one of a few hundred people there who can hear every single thing they're saying. But that's definitely the most interesting thing, hearing everything and getting a completely different perspective on how football is played.
Yeah, definitely. I can imagine it's very fascinating to sit and listen to. But I suppose finally, then, obviously, this is a big step in your journalism career. Where do you want to go next? Obviously, it definitely won't be the last step. So, where do you go from here?
The long-term goal or the short-term goal is to really continue doing this, whether it's continuing to go into games or stay connected with the club, stay in contact with them. It's really building on this and not just having it as a one-time opportunity and then I fade away into the darkness. I want to keep building. I want to improve. And this is just the start for me. My focus right now, obviously, is on Chelsea and covering them. But the current goal for this season is the Euros. I want to be involved in some capacity. I'm also a Switzerland fan. I'm half Swiss. So I want to be involved there, covering the tournament, covering Switzerland in any capacity. And in the long term, it's to keep doing this, keep progressing as a journalist, keep making my name and getting these opportunities and working hard. And, at the end, I want to be at the top. I want to be at the BBC and in that sort of situation. But, this is a huge step for me. There's no denying that. But it is by far not the last one. There's a long way to go. There's a lot to build on. There's a lot more I want to do and achieve. But it's something I definitely want to build on. And from here on, I want to keep improving, keep growing, keep developing myself as a journalist every single day to be the best version of myself that I can be.
Fair enough. I think that's a good mentality to have. Now, Henry, you got anything else you want to add before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I want to ask an interesting question because after Lampard was sacked at Chelsea, there was a massive backlash towards the ownership of the club and the director of football as well. She's a bit of a stickler for certain situations and the way she handles situations especially for Abramovich for his gain, because obviously he controls the club. What do you make of the ownership? Because a lot of Chelsea fans turned against Abramovich after Lampard was sacked. They said it was disrespectful, it was disgraceful, should have been given more time. Do you think that your opinions changed on the ownership because they sacked a club legend from the position that he was in?
In the moment, the emotions were different. Of course, I love Lampard and I was crestfallen to see him sacked. And I shared the same emotions towards the board, not necessarily of hate, but of real disappointment, because we saw Lampard as the turning point for what for me was a toxic cycle of we get a world-class manager and they do well, they have one bad run of form and they're gone. And we start again every year, every 6 months. And I hate that cycle. I've always hated it. And I thought Lampard was a turning point, but when he got sacked, we saw that we were straight back into it. And there was a lot of anger and a lot of outrage, and including from me. But overall, I still support the board, because they've done incredible stuff for us. Roman Abramovich, has changed this club over the last 18 years. Marina Granovskaya, you were referring to just there, she gets a lot of stick and a lot of criticism. She's a real scapegoat, and my main point for now, where she's been getting criticism in 2021 since Lampard was sacked, my main argument has been you weren't saying the same thing in the summer when she negotiated 5-6 world-class transfers, where she spent £200 million, where she brought in some incredible players. Didn't see that energy then. But now suddenly, you see some horrible sexist abuse to her and misogynistic abuse to her just because she's a woman. but she deserves a lot of credit. She is the backbone of this club and this management, because without Marina Granovskaya, in the recent years, we're not seeing the same success. We're not seeing the same output and the same relation as well between Roman Abramovich, because she was his personal assistant back at Gazprom and going through companies in Russia, and she followed him to Chelsea, and she's been key there, because without Granovskaya, Abramovich wouldn't have achieved the things he would have done in terms of the business of the club and that. So, the emotions were difficult towards the club and towards the ownership. There's no denying that, but there is still support for the club. We still do love this sport. There is still a lot of admiration and gratitude. But, it has been difficult in recent months, but it's looking up now. It's looking very positive with Thomas Tuchel.
Perfect.
Definitely. Well, I think that just about rounds us off then. So, as ever, Henry, thank you for joining me. And Nischal, I'll open the floor up if you've got anything to plug or anything like that.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me back on, first of all. I really enjoyed coming on 4 months ago, and it was great to be back on with both of you. Really good discussion and really enjoyed it. If you enjoyed what you heard from me today, you can check out all of my work on nishalsblog.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at Nischal_SP. You can see all of my content there on Chelsea, on football, on the Swiss national team, on politics, everything. I'll be covering it. But I hope you enjoyed today. And also, if you're not subscribed to these guys on the One United podcast, make sure you go subscribe and you go tune in. They do brilliant content, great coverage of Man United. Even though I don't like the club, they do very good coverage of the club. So yeah, make sure you go subscribe to them and follow me and check out my work too.
Appreciate that, man. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to have you on again. It's been a brilliant discussion. Thank you to everyone who watched as per usual and got involved with the comments. If you did enjoy the video, be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll hopefully see you next week at some point.
Manchester United are the champions of Europe again.